most folks in your graduating class, they played all 4 years. Everyone has dreams of getting a chance to maybe play the WNBA or go pro, like Kayla and Chase have done. But you decided to skip your last 2 years at Indiana and then try to give it another go at Fresno State, and then said, you know what, I'm ready to make that change. When did you sense that you were ready to go in a different direction, and how hard was it to just walk from the sport early? And I don't say that as, you were quitting, but, not many folks decide to hang it up in the midst of their college career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would say my freshman year in Marquette. Prior to that, I did have dreams of going to the WNBA. I never really thought much about overseas or anything like that because it was WNBA or bust, right? And so I get to college, and as I learn more about the sport and the opportunities that it may bring after college, I see kind of how these drafts work with the WNBA, and I'm looking, I'm like, okay, so the chances of me actually being drafted and actually making the team, because I was confused when I would see people get drafted, but they would get cut. And I'm like, what type of sense does that make? But as I got older and learned more, I'm like, whoa, you being drafted does not guarantee you anything, because they have a lot of veteran players that they don't want to get rid of. Although I could probably be one of the best players in my class and I could possibly get drafted, you're going against another pool of people where you're competing for a spot with people that have been there for 5, 6 to 10 years and things like that. So I'm like, okay, the odds of me making a team, although I didn't think they were not possible, I said they were slim. And I was like, okay, what about the overseas route? And we went on a foreign trip my freshman year at Marquette. And although it was very beautiful, we went to Rome, we went to Monaco, we went to Nice and Paris. So we kind of went back and forth between Italy and France. And from that trip, we were there for 2 weeks. I was like, yeah, I don't think I can do this long term as far as going to play overseas. You're dealing with the time zone difference. You're dealing with the food, the choices of food. We would go to a lot of steakhouses, but they didn't have A1 steak sauce. And I'm like, what is this? So just kind of like things like that. And I'm like, going overseas, you really kind of have to give up a lot, right? Just me thinking about it as a freshman in college. And I'm like, am I willing to kind of give up some of those things that I have to give up? And, I talked to players that played overseas. I talked to Andrew Robinson and things like that. And so it's not meant for everybody. And that was one thing that I noticed. And at that time, I didn't think that it was meant for me. So my goal was to kind of play the best college basketball that I could play. So that was my goal. I accomplished that somewhat at Marquette individually, but not as a team, which is what matters the most. And then I went to IU. I sat out a year, so that was already hard in and of itself. I went to every single game, but I couldn't travel. And, you take that year out, and it's really hard, especially being someone who likes being on the floor and playing. It was very, very difficult. So I went through that whole year, kept my head held high. It was just like next season, next season, next season. I prepared for next season. I worked my butt off. And then next season comes, 2 of the assistant coaches aren't there anymore, who I liked a lot. I had a lot of respect for them. We have 2 brand new assistant coaches. And then that's when I'm just kind of like, things start to change. They start falling apart. And my goal was to play the best college basketball that I could play, because I knew after this, I probably wasn't going to be playing anymore. I had my mind pretty much made up that I wanted to rather use my degree and go more into my businesses and things like that. And so that year where I was actually able to play, but the cards didn't go the way that I thought they should have, it was draining. It's a lot of things that happen at Indiana, that I'll probably never talk about because it's not worth it. It doesn't matter anymore, right? I probably thought that it mattered a lot at that time because I was a sophomore, junior in college. But as I reflect on it now, you realize, it wasn't that big of a deal. But at that time, it was a big deal because this was a sport that I had loved my entire life. And all I wanted to do was play basketball. Other forces outside of me was making me not enjoy it as much. I'll also take the blame for that too, because as an individual, you can't let other forces, you can't let other forces decide what's fun for you and what's not. That's something that you have to take control over yourself, which, that's immaturity and things like that. As you get older, you learn that as you get older. So, that a lot of it was me too, because I should have never allowed that. But over time, I just felt like, I'm like, this really isn't worth me stressing about. I can go and I started talking to a therapist and things like that, because it was just a lot going on. And I'm just like, this isn't worth it. And so I ended up forgoing the rest of my years. I think I had a year left, maybe 2 at Indiana. And at that time, I was just like, okay, I'll just be done and I'll be a regular college student. I had a great time just being a regular student for once. Then, I would still play open gym and things like that. And I'm like, I still got a couple of years of eligibility left. Let's try to give it another go. And recruited by Fresno State and other schools, I decided to go with Fresno State because of one of the recruiting assistants. I loved her. Her name was Coach Shannon Bush, and I still talk to her to this day. Very, very genuine person. We really built a relationship. She would send me pictures when she was recruiting me of like how Fresno looked and just California in general. And here I am, a Midwest kid. I had never been, we went to tournaments for AAU, but we had never went to the West Coast. So, you think of LA and things like that. I'm like, wow, this would be really cool, good opportunity. I go on my visit. I absolutely love all of the coaches. I love the players. I get to Fresno. This is the situation that I imagined myself being in, being able to fairly compete for a spot and be able to show myself, actually have that chance. But something was just off, and I didn't quite know what it was. It's like, Tia, like, what the hell? You're actually in a position that you wanted to be in from the jump. You're in this position. What is it? And I really just came down to the conclusion that over time, my love for the game just wasn't as great as it once used to be. And I would see that in my practices and things like that, and just my excitement for the game in general. And at that time, I was just like, I'm drained, right? Dealing with various things that I dealt with through my college career. And I'm like, you know what? I'm tired. And quite frankly, I got my degree from Indiana. I graduated early. Quite frankly, I don't have to deal with this anymore. Even though this is probably an ideal situation for me, it was just the aftermath of everything that I had been through before. And I was like, I don't have to do this anymore if I don't want to. I felt like it got to the point where I was doing it just because I thought I was supposed to. And then I realized, like, no, you're a grown woman now. You make your decisions, and you own those decisions, regardless of whether other people think it may be good or regardless of whether other people may think it was bad. And that was the first time in my life where I had made a decision for myself. Like, obviously, your parents make a lot of decisions for you. My mom made a lot of decisions for me because I was in high school. That's what you're supposed to. You get to 18, then you get to college, and you have your coaches telling you when you need to go to sleep, when you could nap, when you could eat. I never really had control over my life, quite honestly, until it got to that point where I was just like, enough is enough. Like, if I'm not happy, I don't have to deal with anything. I only deal with what I want to deal with. And it was at that moment, I went and talked to the coach, and I just told him, like, it's nothing you guys did, and it really sucks that it has to come down to this. It's just kind of like everything before, and I'm just like drained. And, I got my degree. I accomplished everything that I wanted to accomplish. It's time for me to move on. And so that's pretty much how it went. And honestly, I like to reminisce on my college basketball playing days, but I really haven't looked back.
I can't argue with the results that you've accomplished since then, but I have to imagine there is still a shock value.
When you play sports, and it's really kind of unfortunate, a lot of times people see you as just an athlete. And you even see that with places like the NBA and things like that, where people think LeBron James should only play basketball. But what people fail to realize is that behind all the glory and all the talents that this person may have on the basketball court, they're a real person at the end of the day. They go through things the same way that someone that just lost their job may go through. And so people were shocked more so because they had only saw me as a basketball player my entire life and as a top basketball player and things like that. So naturally, they were like, whoa, what are you doing? Are you sure? Da, da, da. My mom, she was very supportive. She completely understood, and she's like, you should do what's best for you. So she was the most supportive. And, I came up with the quote. I didn't come up with this quote, but as I was kind of like going through these times and kind of thinking about stuff like this, I came across a quote that said, those that matter don't mind, and those that mind don't matter. And so I was listening to all the people that had something. No one was negative. I will say that. No one was negative, but the people that were saying, I think you should do this, that, and the other, they really didn't matter, because at the end of the day, they weren't focusing on me as the person, not as the athlete, me as a person. Like, how am I doing mentally? How am I doing emotionally? How am I doing physically? They just enjoyed watching me play basketball, and they were kind of being selfish in a way because they wanted to continue enjoying that.